Looking back, do you feel like that was kind of a delusional thought process that like, oh, I didn't play in high school, but I can go play in college? Or was that never a thought to you?
Well, now it is like, man, how did I do it, right? But back then it was just like, I don't care what anybody says about me. It doesn't matter. This is my dream. This is what I want to do, and I'm gonna go all in and do it.
Three, two, one, yeah!
Welcome to Willing to Fail. I'm your host, Peyton Bennett, as usual. Today we got a very special guest. He never played varsity football, but he's made it to an NFL team. He was a 2017 D2 national champion in college, where he walked on. He was an XFL champion and MVP in 2023. He led the UFL in passing yards and touchdowns in 2024. He was a Harlan Hill Trophy winner in college, which is awarded to the best player in Division II. And if that's not enough, he bowled 12 perfect games in his life. And now he has a book coming out about his crazy story called The Spring King, which comes out at the end of March. So with no further ado, welcome to the show, Luis Perez. How are you?
Doing great, Peyton. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, dude, doing some quick research on you. Your story is pretty unique, to say the least. So no place to start better than the beginning. I saw that you come from like an athletic family. What was your childhood like, and what were your parents like?
Yeah, so growing up, sports was in my family since I was born. My dad was a professional soccer player in Mexico. He played for 14 years. My mom was a ballerina. So I mean, sports and athletics were kind of just around as a kid. So I had a pretty fun childhood.
So you grew up in San Diego?
San Diego, that's correct.
So your dad being a professional soccer player, was soccer your favorite sport growing up? I mean, it looks like you played a lot of different sports. How long until football became like your main sport?
Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, my dad was obviously pushing me to play soccer, right? That was his dream, that was his passion. But something about the pigskin, man, it always stuck with me. I mean, I was that kid that just fell in love with the football and slept with it, took it on every car ride, threw it in every aisle in the store. I mean, that was me. There was just something about it. I just fell in love with it. Which is funny because my dad didn't really know much about American football.
So, and then in high school, you played what? Basketball, football. You bowled a lot. What were the main sports you were playing?
Yeah, so throughout high school, I played basketball my freshman and sophomore year. That was that. And then, I tried out my freshman year in high school and, for whatever reason, it didn't end up working out. I always had that dream of playing in the NFL and being a quarterback, but it just it didn't work out. At that same time I was peaking in bowling, and I remember, my freshman year leaving practice and having to rush to my bowling leagues, and the timing wasn't right, and that's when I decided, what, let me just put football on hold and let me pursue bowling full time.
Okay, so how young were you when your bowling career started, and when did you realize like, man, I'm a lot better than everybody at bowling?
Yeah, so we first went, it was my dad's birthday. I think I was about 9 or 10 years old, and we went out there, and I mean, I just fell in love with it. I dominated everybody. I won, and I'm like, this is kind of fun, and it kind of just escalated to, hey, got my own ball, got my own shoes, joined the league, kind of that deal, and then started competing all over US. So that's kind of how it started.
How old were you when you bowled your first perfect game? What was that experience like?
It was great. Funny, I had both 5 299s before that.
Oh wow,
And so when I was 13, I bowled my first 300.
that's crazy. And you bowled 12 of them since. How much bowling do you do nowadays, or is that kind of on the back burner?
Recreationally, it's probably been, 4 or 5 months since I've been. But I mean, that's something like riding a bike. You can pick that up pretty quickly.
Okay, so then at some point you decided you said you never played varsity football in high school, but you, I guess, played like JV or some level of that, and like they tried to move your position. Can you kind of elaborate on that and what kind of pushed you away from football at high school?
Yeah. So as a kid, I always had that dream and passion of playing quarterback in the NFL, only quarterback, right? And, I tried out my freshman year in high school, and for whatever reason, I was kind of always a taller guy, and they ended up telling me, hey, you know what? We kind of already have a quarterback. Why don't you go to tight end? So I'm like, sure, whatever's best for the team. So I went there, and then, we ran a wing T offense where we didn't really throw the ball much, and I'm over here blocking, and I'm like, this is not fun, right? So I just remember saying, you know what, like, I'm just gonna put this on hold because again, that was at the same time where I was peaking in bowling. I had just bowled, probably like my fourth and fifth 300, and I'm competing and one of the top bowlers in California. So then, it was one of those things where all throughout high school I bowled, and then it was the last home game my senior year of high school, and all my buddies ended up convincing me like, man, come on, like come on to the game. You haven't been to any football games, like just come on. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go to the game. So I go to the game, and I remember sitting in the stands and looking down. I remember getting full body chills. Like, man, like, what am I doing up here in the stands? Like, I need to be down there. I can bowl when I'm 50, 60 years old, right? This quarterback dream I have, there's such a small window to pursue it. And that's really the moment where I decided, you know what, like, let me pursue this NFL dream.
So when you made that decision, what was the next steps to that? Because like obviously recruiting is going to be kind of tough when you don't have any film. So what was kind of your thought process? And looking back, do you feel like that was kind of a delusional thought process that like, oh, I didn't play in high school, but I can go play in college, or was that never a thought to you?
Well, now it is like, man, how did I do it, right? But back then it was just like, I don't care what anybody says about me. It doesn't matter. This is my dream. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to go all in and do it. And my first instinct was, hey, let me get on YouTube. Let me check out some videos, right? The only thing I knew was that I can throw a nice spiral and I can throw the ball pretty far. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything about drops, coverages, fronts. Schemes. I knew nothing about that. So after that, I'm like, all right, let me start, looking at my mechanics, right? The foundation. So I started watching videos and, just did that over and over. Highlights, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. All these guys, I'm watching highlights and watching how they move and how they throw. And I remember after that, I'm just like, all right, I need to get a coach, right? I need to go on the field and start like getting coached. So luckily, one of my buddies, his uncle is Achilles Smith. So Achilles Smith was the third pick in the 1999 draft. So he, I'm like, hey, I just have him see me throw. So we go out, we start throwing. He's like, you have a lot of potential. Come on. I'm like, okay, cool. So he took me out to a couple workouts, and I just started training with him, training. I'm there. I'm harassing him like, hey, when's your next session? Hey, when's your next session? Hey. So finally, 2-3 months go by, and I'm just training nonstop with him. And he gets me an opportunity to walk on at Southwestern Community College, where, funny story, I remember walking into the head coach's office and telling him, hey, I want to be your next quarterback. And he tells me, all right, well, where'd you play high school ball? I'm like, well, actually, I didn't play high school football. And he kind of like looks at me like, what do you mean, And yeah, so he tells me, all right, so practice time is at this time. You can go out and try out. So that was really the first like transition from bowling to football. And that's where it all started at Southwestern College.
Okay, so at that point you get there, like from what I saw on the internet, you were like the ninth quarterback on the depth chart. Like it was a pretty filled room. Like what? It sounds like from what you're saying, you were just kind of like focused on the long term vision and didn't really care about any adversity that hit you. And then, what was kind of your mindset during that process, and how quickly was it until you saw the field?
Yeah, so this was 2013 where, again, I'm walked on and I'm lined to the depth chart. And I remember thinking like, man, there's a lot of people here. And all these guys were all like local high school stars that were, trying out. They didn't get Division I scholarships. So I'm like, man, all right, this might be tough, but hey, I'm going all in. So I remember just showing up there, first one there, last one to leave. Every single day. And I remember coach telling me, hey, bud, like, you got a lot of quarterbacks. You're not going to get any reps. Like, you might want to try a different position or transfer or whatever. I'm like, sorry, coach. I want to play here and I'm going to stay here until I get an opportunity. So, all right, well, you might not get any reps. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So little by little, people transferred, people got hurt, people switched positions. I remember one guy was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to play baseball instead of football. And now I'm fourth, right? And it's just by default, I'm fourth. And I start getting reps, and by this time I'm already learning. I'm learning the playbook, and people are starting to look at me like, who is this guy? We haven't seen him get any reps. Now he's getting reps. He's doing good. So I remember fall camp came around, and they kind of already had a starter that started the year before who was a sophomore. So really the backup three guys were really fighting for the number 2 spot. So I just remember I had a really good camp. I'm just dominating. People looking at me like, who is this guy? So finally, coach names me the backup. And so the moment I saw the field it was third game of the season. Starter, we're down 14 points in the fourth quarter. And starter goes down, separates his AC joint. And I come in the game, score 17 unanswered, 2 touchdown passes, and we win the game. So that was really the first time I really saw the field.
Hell yeah. So this was what year?
This was 2014 now.
2014. And before this
Oh, excuse
game,
me. No, 2013. Excuse me.
okay, so 2013. Before this game, when was the last time you played quarterback on a field in organized football in a game?
Never.
That's pretty crazy, dude. Yeah. Okay, so then did you start the rest of the season then after
So after that game, we ended up playing a really good team after that. It was a big game, a big rivalry game. And we were underdogs. And I remember, prepared my butt off. I mean, I was just, there was an obsession of like, there was no way I'm losing this game to this team. And, sure enough, we go out there and we just dominate them. I mean, we beat them 35 to like 14. I had 4 touchdowns. We had about a kid didn't even play anything, was a bowler, to now in college, starting games, having the type of game like that. And I remember thinking like, all right, this is it. This is the start of something new. This is my dream. This is what I wanted. So next game would come around and second drive, I remember dropping back and a lineman gets thrown into my leg and I break my leg. So, talk about starting at rock bottom, getting to the top and then right back down, right? So that was a whole nother beast to deal with, right? And I never really dealt with that type of adversity. So I remember rehabbing, and had some complications, so I couldn't really get back on the field because I was trying to rush so bad to get back on the field. I wasn't, waiting the necessary time that should have been waited. So finally, the next year, this was 2014 now, it was one of those things where, hey, I thought I was going to be the guy, but they ended up bringing a Division I transfer, and they were like, all right, well, he's going to be the guy. So he's the guy, and I remember being so upset, like, man, why? Like, I just, I know it's only 2 games, but like, come on, give me a chance, right? So deja vu, third game of the season again, starter goes down. Same exact scenario, down 14. I come in the game, 17 unanswered, bring us back. Same exact scenario, same week.
That's crazy.
And I never looked back. Got All-American, won a conference championship, went 10-1. Awesome feeling. An awesome feeling.
Yeah, dude, that's a crazy story. It feels like the universe was just kind of pushing back on you, being like, "Are you sure you want to go through all this? Is this sure what you really want?" So, so what was the decision like of like you had that great season, then is that the season before you transferred?
Yeah, so after that season, I was living that Division I dream, right? That's everyone's dream. Go to Division I, play Division I football. So I remember emailing thousands of school. I mean, just emailing constantly, nonstop. And, I would get some emails back. Hey, you're only 1 year starter, your lack of experience, you have the size, you have everything there, but you know what? You only played 1 year. So I got all that. Finally, I get an offer from UC Davis. And UC Davis calls me now. Keep in mind, Aaron Rodgers is like one of my guys. Like, he's my idol. I watched a bunch. Him, Drew Brees, Brady, and Manning. And the UC Davis coach calls me. And the UC Davis coach was Aaron Rodgers' coach at Cal. So I'm ecstatic. I'm like, man, I'm gonna get coached by the same guy that Aaron Rodgers got coached by. But finally go on a visit, offer me on the spot. Everything's great. A week later, they call me to tell me, hey, you know what? Your math is not transferable for a UC school, only a California State school. So I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me, right? So they pull a scholarship. So then I'm like, all right, well, now what? I don't have any Division I offers. It's already May, June. People are reporting already. I remember researching, hey, which Division II quarterbacks are in the NFL? And I remember finding a name, Dustin Vaughn, who played for the Cowboys at the time. And I'm like, all right, well, where did he play at? West Texas A&M. Okay, well, who coached him? Oh, Coach Carful. Where's Coach Carful now? Texas A&M Commerce. If he did it, I could do it. So I remember reaching out to Commerce saying, hey, I'm interested in your school, this and that. They fly out to San Diego, watch me throw, offer me on the spot. And within 2 weeks, I'm on the road from California to Texas. So, and that was the transition to Texas A&M Commerce.
Interesting. And then that was your first time living outside of California?
Yes.
A little bit different out there, huh?
Yeah, a lot different.
So, okay, so how long you get there? I mean, you didn't have to go through the whole thing where you wait until the starter gets injured week 3 and you come in down 14. You didn't have to do that again, did you?
No, so I did not. So I get there and I actually redshirt the first year. So took the year and just like got bigger, faster, stronger, learned the game more. Because again, I only had really a year under my belt, so I needed more experience. So that was a phenomenal year for me, just from a development standpoint. And after that, I won a starting job in 2016, and we're 11-2, most wins in school history, most passing yards, most passing touchdowns. It was great. We went second round of playoffs, and we lost to Grand Valley State, who's a powerhouse Division II school. And then after that, my senior year, I remember going to the national championship game when we lost to Grand Valley, and I drove in a snowstorm all the way to Kansas City, where the championship game was, to see the environment, see the atmosphere of what it was like to play in that game, because I knew, again, it was an obsession of like, there was no way that I was not going to be here next year. Like, that was my goal on my fridge: national championship, Harlan Hill winner. I mean, that was on my fridge since I stepped foot in Commerce, Texas. And I remember watching the game and thinking like, yeah, we can definitely be here next year. So went back and started off rough. Didn't have a good first game of the year, and ended up going 14-1 though. Most wins in school history, and going on a great run in the playoffs, winning the national championship, and ultimately winning the Harlan Hill Trophy. So that was a good way to end my college career for sure.
That's awesome, man. I mean, at that time, were you able to like materialize of like to really appreciate and think back like where you came from not playing football at all to that moment, or were you still kind of just more focused on the keep going, now it's the NFL next step kind of thing?
Correct. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So as a competitor, as an athlete, like, you never look behind you, right? You never try to dwell on what happened in the past or what's going on. You're always looking at, hey, what's moving forward? Hey, moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. It's funny you say that, because the first time I really started to tap into my past and what I've all been through was when I was writing my book. That's really when I started looking back and understanding, hey, man, I really went through a lot. Like, how did I go through this stuff, right? So it's sometimes it's good to go back and just appreciate and cherish everything you went through, because everything you went through in life really builds the moment and makes the moment more special.
Yeah. I mean, it's also good, right? You don't want to think like that while you're on the field in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah.
um, Sweet. So, I mean, it seems like, I mean, you didn't go D1, but I mean, you were at the pinnacle of D2, like in one way or another. It seems like your dreams are starting to come true. And then after your senior year, what's kind of the thought process of like getting an agent and testing out the NFL waters?
Yeah. So after that, it was, all right, what's next? Right. Like you said. And I got an agent. Again, started trying to put my name out there as much as I could. And I remember, emailing a bunch of Division I schools to try to get into their pro day, because that's where all the scouts were going to be, right? Scouts don't really come to small schools. So I remember emailing a bunch of schools. Finally, I got into A&M's pro day. So I'm like, yes, this is great. So I remember going there, and they had like some top receivers that, were projected day 1, day 2 guys in the draft. So I get there, and I just remember thinking, this is my opportunity. Like, I'm going to throw with scouts. There's pro coaches here, general managers. I mean, this is great. So I get there, and the day before the pro day, my agent calls me. He's like, hey, Johnny Manziel's in town. He wants to make an NFL comeback. He's going to throw out the pro day. So at first I'm like, oh, this sucks, right? Like, he's going to take all my shine. Like, I want to get seen, this and that. But, I shifted my perspective to, well, maybe it's a good thing, because now they get to see me throw against a former Heisman Trophy winner, first round NFL pick. And they'll get to compare both of us and see where I'm at. So I remember going out there and having one of the best throwing sessions I've had. And I mean, I crush it. Johnny Manziel even put a tweet about me after the pro day. I mean, it was great. It was a good time. Talked to a bunch of scouts, and that's really what helped me put my name on the map. So finally, draft comes around, and I remember we're at my uncle's house and we're having a draft party. And I remember Chris Mortensen, I don't know if you remember that name, puts out a tweet, hey, Mel Kiper thinks Perez might be, one of the next quarterbacks taken. So we're ecstatic. I mean, we're fired up, man. And finally, draft comes around, and nothing happens. So then after, I'm not understanding the whole process yet. I'm thinking if you don't get drafted, you're done, right? I'm not sure what goes on after that. So my agent's telling me, hey, I'm going to try to get you a free agent opportunity, undrafted free agent. So I'm just waiting. A week, 2 weeks go by, nothing. So finally, my agent calls me and tells me, hey, the Rams are having a local tryout. Uh, if you live in a certain mile radius, you can go to the local tryout. They have an opening. Somebody had bailed out last second. So I'm like, great. So they booked me a flight, got there, and I remember thinking, like, man, I better have the best day of my life here. Like, this is all I'm getting. And I went there, and sure enough, I did. I had probably the best throwing session I've ever had. Missed probably like 23 passes out of maybe 50 or 60 passes. And, Sean McVay, Zach Taylor, all these guys are looking at me like, who the heck is this guy? So finally, GM brings me in and he tells me, hey, we had no intention of signing you, but you did so well that we're going to sign you. So that was a good moment. And so that was my first initial start in the NFL.
That's gotta be an exciting feeling, especially like we talked about in your journey, like to sign the papers to be on the Rams. Like that's gotta be a crazy experience. But I keep seeing the trend in your story. It's like you don't get that many opportunities, but when you do, you have this mindset of like, man, this is my one opportunity. Like I have to do my best. And then it sounds like you do your best. Like what is it about those opportunities in your mindset that kind of locks in those moments?
Yeah. My thing is this. I'm prepared as can be, right? And to me, nerves come from lack of preparation. So I don't get nervous during games. Like that's just one of the things that I just don't do, right? There's no point in doing that. I'm prepared. Well, what is there to be nervous about? And if you really trust your preparation and you trust all the work you put in throughout the week for that specific day, you shouldn't have any nerves, right? I have excitement, right? Some people may confuse excitement with nerves. I just want the game to hurry up and come because I want to play because it's a fun game to play, So, but yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing for me.
Makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people can apply that to whatever they're doing. So all right, so you signed with the Rams. You started to see this glimpse of this NFL dream coming true, and like, kind of what was the process of those first couple of weeks with the Rams, and how did it end?
Yeah, so it was great. A great time. I really enjoyed my time there, developed a lot as a player. Coming from, Commerce, the play call was doubles 90, right? And that's the whole play call, right? So now, Y short to south right clamp, pass 18 Wanda, Y bend, lick, X strike, Z bench, can it with 14 man, right? That's a whole play call. So having to memorize that was a huge hurdle that I had to overcome. And I'm thankful because it helped me to this day. So got there, I got put on practice squad, but eventually ended up getting released after that. So that ended, and then after that, I'm thinking, all right, well, what's next? So my agent calls me, hey, there's this league, called the Alliance of American Football that's coming up. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? So I remember going to a quarterback camp, doing really well and getting drafted. So that was really the start of all the spring leagues in my journey was the Alliance of American Football.
It's where the Spring King was born, huh?
Yes.
So for you personally, like, I know every opportunity is different, and sometimes like there's different factors that go into it. But for you, preference-wise, would you rather be like a backup on an organization like the Rams where you're learning a lot, or would you rather be like the star of like a AAF or UFL team where you're playing and starting every single day? Like, what's more important to you?
Yeah, so I would say this is a great question. So I would say this. If I'm a backup, like a true number two in the NFL, I'd rather do that because not only, I mean, you're in the NFL, right? So obviously financially you're doing much better. And two, like you got to be ready at any moment because you are the next man up, right? Different than like a practice squad. If you're on practice squad and you're not really studying the game plan, you're just studying the other team and have to mimic what they're doing on scout team, and you're not really getting to develop. I'd much rather be playing in the UFL and developing live bullets, right? Somebody that's on practice squad does not develop the same as someone who is actually playing in games, right? They can't touch you in practice, right? So you can't simulate a rush. You can't extend plays. It's not full speed. So, and again, you don't really get that in the NFL when you're a practice squad guy. So I'd much rather play in these spring leagues.
Makes sense. All right, so your first stints in the AAF with the Birmingham Iron, how was that experience? And then what was the reaction to when the league kind of fell apart right after?
Yeah, that was unfortunate. We were going so well. We had just clinched playoffs. I was playing well. And yeah, I remember I had my Apple Watch on and I see a notification from ESPN that says AAF shutting down all operations. Um, And I'm like, whoa, is this true? So I would bring it up to our head coach, and sure enough, he calls a meeting within 30 minutes, and that's it, done. And I remember going back to the hotel thinking, like, man, we just clinched playoffs. Like, this is great. I'm playing well. Like, what's going on? And I remember, sure enough, I played well enough to get another opportunity in the NFL. So I was with the Eagles in 2019. End up, getting released, and before we got to training camp. And then after that, I played for Detroit, where I was in Detroit. I won't get into the whole detail of like what happened in those times. That's all in my book. Pretty crazy what happened. But anyway, so after that, I remember thinking, all right, well, this is it, right? It's 2019. We have nothing, and I'm not getting any calls from the NFL. So what's next? There's no AAF anymore. So I remember hearing this buzz about this XFL thing. Like, what is this? So I ended up researching what it is, and sure enough, it was going to start in the spring. So I'm like, yes, like perfect timing, right? Like I just got cut in the NFL. I need another opportunity. So I get an opportunity with the XFL. I signed to the LA Wildcats. And that's like right down the road. That's 2 hours from my house. So I'm thinking, all right, this is perfect. My family gets to go to the games. Like, this is awesome. So then a week before the first game, I get traded. I get traded to New York. And I have a pregnant wife at home that's going to give birth any minute. And now I'm in New York. So having to juggle that and figure all that out, that was let's just say that was a pretty big obstacle to overcome. But we made it happen. And when I got traded, obviously, I'm not the starter getting traded a week before the first game. So I remember getting there, just learning the playbook, right? Like a quarterback, if you don't know the playbook, you're not gonna be able to play well. And I just studied. Finally got my opportunity to play. Went in late in the game against St. Louis in 2020. Had a scoring drive, ended up losing, but we were down quite a few touchdowns. So I get to start the next week, and we're playing the next week against the LA Wildcats, who traded me. So that was a pretty cool moment, a good redemption moment. I was as prepared as ever. I mean, I went in there and just we won that game, so that was good. And
Was that
we're
in
on a
LA
roll.
or New York?
No, it was in New York. It was in New York. So we ended up winning that game. I'm fired up. I mean, I wanted to beat them so bad, for trading me, and it was a good time, And then the next week we played in Dallas, and we beat the Renegades. Ironically, we beat the Renegades. So now, I'm 2-0 as a starter. I'm the highest rated quarterback according to PFF. I mean, I'm just ready to rock and roll. And, we're starting to get our peak. And the next game we're playing against the Houston Roughnecks, who were undefeated at the time. So we're like, all right, this is our chance to dethrone them and put our name on the map. And I remember 2 days before that game, COVID. And COVID shut everything down. So that was the end of the XFL right there.
I mean, at that point, everyone's kind of frustrated at that point in COVID, but like, what is your frustration level of like, dude, I keep doing my best. I'm seizing these opportunities and literally the leagues are just disintegrating under my fingers. Like, what is your kind of mentality during that whole thing?
I kept having faith, kept staying grounded, continued to just do my part and work and work and work. And I wanted to live with no regrets, right? So I didn't want that opportunity to come and I'm not prepared for it. So I just relentlessly worked and stayed ready. And luckily, the next league opened up after that, a whole year later, the spring league, which this was kind of like a developmental league where, everybody played. I only played the first half of every game. And another quarterback played the second half of every game. And it was good. Got my feet wet, got to play some more, right? So I'm not just sitting out a whole 2 years now at that point if I missed that league. So yeah, it was great. We ended up going to the championship. And then after that, that league ended. Didn't get an opportunity with the NFL. They were still kind of iffy with the COVID, who they were bringing in and all that. And then after that, the USFL emerged. So that was a new league that came out. Like the spring league kind of formed into the USFL. So I get there and, man, I remember just like praying to get drafted. And, long story short, they don't draft me, right? So I'm like devastated. And I'm like, how am I not getting picked up? And don't get picked up. Finally, like 4 or 5 days before the first game, the generals call me and they tell me, hey, our starter broke his toe. Can you come on? Can you come play for us? I said, absolutely. So I went in there, studied my butt off, got my opportunity. In 4 days, I became the starter. So became the starter, went on this nice streak. We started out only one, but we went 9 games in a row, went to the playoffs. It was a tough ending because, we were getting hot at the right time. We just didn't have our best game in the playoffs. After that, luckily I get a chance with the Rams again. So I'm there with the Rams, and I'm fired up. I'm excited. I'm like, this is it. The Rams call me back. Like, they want me back, because I finished the season really well. I was had the highest passer rating, best touchdown reception ratio, highest completion percentage. I did well. So I get to the Rams camp, and I'm doing really well. And I end up getting hurt. So I end up hurting my calf, never could really overcome that, and end up getting released. So got released there. Now I'm thinking, what's next, right? Like, I got to go back to the USFL, or what's the plan? So I remember training, and then I remember the XFL was coming back around. So I'm like, this is interesting. Like, USFL, XFL, what's going on? I ended up choosing the XFL because of the timing, right? The XFL, when you're done with your season, you get to go to OTA's mini camp, and then you get to go to training camp. And as a quarterback, you have to learn the playbook, and you can't really play to your full potential unless you know the playbook. So I ended up choosing the XFL over the USFL. So I went there, and I was with the Vegas Vipers. We started off rough. We started out 0-4, fired our offensive coordinator second week of the season. It was a rough start. Ended up getting traded. So I got traded to the Renegades, and I think they were about a 500 team. I think they were 3-3 or so when I got traded, and ended up winning my first start with them, and then making a playoff run, making to the playoffs, winning the first game in the playoffs, and then ultimately winning the championship. And I remember that championship game was I mean, it's still like, it's an unbelievable moment because, again, the situation you go through in life really builds the moment, right? If it was easy, it wouldn't be as gratifying or as satisfying of like what it took to really get to that moment. And again, from being traded, all these different things that had to happen, to now going to the championship game, winning the championship game, and winning the MVP was awesome. A great feeling. Unfortunately, though, I ended up breaking my foot in the first half of the game. So, I had some NFL interest after, but I couldn't go just because, it was a 3-4 month recovery. So that sucked for sure.
How does the winning a championship in the XFL, you talk about the story and what made it great is the heart. You're surrounded by a team of guys that all have dealt with crazy different adversity. How does a championship like that compare to one in college, or are they just like a completely different experience?
They're similar, but they're different, right? Like in college, it's like you build something, right? It was 2 years of grinding, of working with the same guys over and over again. And you saw the growth in the players, right? Like, I remember we had this 4 a.m. group, right? And it started with me and this other guy. And we would just go in the weight room. We had a little turf in our weight room. We throw the ball. We do some weights. We do some core, whatever. We get a workout at 4 a.m, right? Start out with 2 guys. Then it went to 3, then 5, then 7, then 15. Then we had 23 people in there in the morning, right? So you see the transition of, man, like being a leader and, wanting to get the best out of each individual by creating these workouts so everybody can show up. And because ultimately it's a team game. A quarterback cannot do it alone. So I always try to enhance everybody's play, enhance everyone's work ethic, right? To ultimately get a championship. So that was a little bit different. That one was really satisfying, again, because from how we started, right? To all the work we had putting into that day. Now, the XFL Championship was also phenomenal because I'm getting traded halfway through the season. I'm having to learn the playbook, this and that, to winning games, to going to the playoffs. We were 4-6 and won a championship, right? Like, that was an unreal moment. So I wouldn't say one's better than the other. They were just different.
Okay, so then where did your football career go from after winning that championship in the XFL?
Yeah, so after the XFL 2023, I, again, broke my foot, so I'm rehabbing. That was some dark times because I really thought that was my breakthrough to get back to the NFL, but I couldn't go. So I ended up going back to the UFL and, giving it another go. And this year, we didn't have the best season, but individually, I had probably my best season of my career outside of college. And it was kind of a bittersweet because I couldn't really enjoy my personal success because we weren't winning as a team. But yeah, I played well enough to get a opportunity with the Chargers. So I got signed by the Chargers, which now the Chargers is like a big deal to me because I grew up in San Diego and, watching games in Qualcomm Stadium as a kid was a great time. And yeah, so I remember getting signed by the Chargers, and unfortunately, it came to an end after training camp. I won't get into the details there, but it's unfortunate how that played out. And yeah, so we got released, went back home, and just started training. And basically now here we are getting ready to report for the next UFL season.
Still with the Renegades, right?
Still with the Renegades.
So what is the schedule like for the season? Starts when and ends when?
Yeah, so our first game is March 29th. And then it goes through the championship game, I believe, is June 13th. So that's the timeline of our season.
Okay. And then still the hope is have a great season, make a mini camp in the NFL, and keep chasing that dream, right?
100%. That's the dream.
Hell yeah.
That's the goal.
You fire me up. I'm rooting for you now.
Appreciate you.
All right, so how did this you're still in the midst of your crazy football journey of ups and downs, and who knows how it's going to finish. What made you want to go ahead and write a book about your story so far?
Yeah, I just think my book can impact so many people. Like, even people that aren't in sports, like just the day-to-day, like I go into detail of the obstacles and how to overcome things and how to switch your mindset and perspective, and just overall how to really go about obstacles and adversity. Again, I really think it'll benefit a lot of people. Like, I'll just tell you right now, one thing I talk about in my book is the process of adversity, right? There's 3 phases, right? There's the adversity, right, which is the obstacle, whatever happened, right? Then there's emotion that comes right after that. And then it's the action you take on the adversity or the obstacle, right? So early in my career, right, you get to choose how long you stay in each phase, right? So I remember it was like, okay, obstacle, and then it was emotion, but I stayed in that stage way too long, right? It was hard for me to turn that page of like, all right, let me just take action, right? So if you just eliminate that middle section of emotion and you go straight from adversity, right, to action, your life becomes so much better. And again, that's just one of the things that I talk about is early in my career, like what I would tell myself is like, hey, screw the emotion part. Hey, life happens. Like, that's life. Just move on. And how am I going to fix it? Right? Don't dwell in that emotion stage too long, because that's when you go down a rabbit hole. And then the longer you stay in it, the harder it is to get out.
It makes a lot of sense. You've already kind of alluded to it, like the example, the Johnny Manziel situation, right? You get the adversity that he could be taking a lot of snaps from you from that pro day, your big chance. And it sounds like you were able to kind of pull yourself out of that emotion thing really quickly, and like kind of, I feel like you're also good at not just taking yourself or putting the emotion to the side or taking yourself out of that section, but more of like flipping it the other way around of like, all right, what's the positive? Like what's the good part of it? Like why can this be a good thing? Is that something you taught yourself through time, or is that something you learned from your parents or just from your experiences, you think?
Yeah, I just try to find a positive in every negative situation, because there is one, right? Everything in life is perspective and how you view it, right? And when you're in control of how you view things, your life will change, because again, you can find a positive in every negative situation. I promise you that.
No, I fully agree with you, and I try to train my brain to do the same thing you're doing. So what is kind of the positive things and the things you're most looking forward to here in 2025?
I'm excited to go out there and play some football, to be honest. It's been a long time, right? Like the NFL, you get OTAs, you get, phase 1, phase 2, OTAs, mini camp, training camp. Like, we don't have that. We have 3 weeks and then we play a game, right? So there's like a long period of time where you're not playing real football. So I'm just anxious to get back out there. I'm excited. A whole another year under my belt. We got a lot of pieces coming back. I'm just excited to get back with the guys and go compete.
Well, I'm excited to watch you too. Last thing before we go, you've answered all my questions. Other than your book, is there anything else you want to plug, or where can the people find you on social media?
Yeah, so my social media is Perez Luis QB. You can find me on Instagram. And yeah, just, follow my jersey, look out for my book. In the March this year, The Spring King. You can buy it on Amazon.
Sweet. I'm excited to check out the book too and see what kind of that drama is that went down in Detroit and with the Chargers.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you, and that's a show.